So now we're going to talk about the karmic field of engagement, or I would like to call it the karmic ecosystem, and 3 levels of God. So let's look at this world. Let's look at what's behind the mechanism of karma and what physical and moral laws and forces are operating here. The things that create the effects that come as a result of our actions. So the karmic field of engagement is lawful, and the physical and moral laws of the universe are part of it. So let's look at what a field is. A field is something that creates an influence at a distance from its source. That's a quote from Mark Newkirk in his video, What's Happening 1. I highly recommend it. So there are 5 classic non-physical fields: the electrical field, magnetic field, gravitational field, and the strong and weak nuclear attraction fields. Those are all fields where at the source there's diminishing effect the farther you get from the source of the field. There is, in addition to these 5 classical fields, something called an information field, which has the quality of non-locality. It is everywhere all the time. And it explains all anomalies and phenomena. It's underneath all the other classical fields. Here's another quote from Mark Newkirk. It gives rise to all the 5 other non-physical fields and everything we ever experience. So everything we experience in our lives, in this world, everything we ever have experienced, is from the information field. So it's a pretty powerful and potent understanding to realize that there is an information field. I like this ancient illustration because it talks to me about how everything is joined with all those ropes and knots joining everything together. All the information is flowing back and forth between all the individuals in that old carving. And so let's look at some of the qualities of the information field. The information field, in it, all possibilities exist at once. You could say it's the great storehouse of possibility. And it's pervasive. It's everywhere in all realities. And we are intrinsically a part of it. There is absolutely no escaping the information field. And everything in it is interconnected, inter-influencing, intercommunicating. Now, if you think about it, that explains synchronicities really very nicely. And Mark also says in his What's Happening talk, all living things have an information field associated with their physical manifestation and actually cause and maintain the sustenance of their existence as a construct. If you think about it, we all have an information field. The information field is everywhere, and our own personal fields are non-separate from it. It's like we're a really important part of the greater whole. We cannot separate ourselves from it. We are intrinsically interconnected with all of it all the time. And you can see how our own vibratory frequency, our own attitude, our own emotions are bleeding into this information field and spreading all around us. And we are influencing the people, the things, the earth, the energies all around us, both directly and beyond. So let's talk about God for a minute, because this information field to me really speaks to the concept and the understanding of God. There are 3 levels of understanding non-duality, or God, or source, or oneness. The first level is, I call it sort of the beginner God, where God was the creator of the world, and the world is purposeful, well designed, and has an intelligence behind it. And God is localized within a body. See the image of Michelangelo's God creating Adam in the Sistine Chapel. When I was first on my spiritual journey a few decades ago, I was lying on my bed, completely relaxed, in the late afternoon, and I was doing a breathing exercise. And all of a sudden, this really strong vibration started climbing up my body and enveloped my entire body up to my head. And when it went above my head, a veil lifted, and there were two brightly lit male heads there in profile. And I was bathed in unconditional love. And telepathically, they said, "Oh, I can't believe you're here so soon." And I thought, uh-oh, where did I stumble into? What's going on here? But I was so enjoying bathing in unconditional love. I never wanted that experience to end. Yet it did. And afterwards, I sort of tried to get back there, but I never could, of course. And I would tell people, and I would wonder to myself, but if there were two of them, how could that be God? And you know, that understanding of God as a man, a gray-bearded man in the sky, is the first level of understanding God. But there's another evolution beyond that understanding of God. And that's what I call the second gradation of God, where God became the world. Like the spider creates a web from itself and then takes it back when it is done with the web. That's how the world of this second level God could be described. But the trouble with this level of understanding God, this way of understanding God, that God is the world, but that doesn't explain all of the bad things in the world, all of the atrocities that go on here. Why would God create a world where things are so horrible if it's based in love and oneness? And so there is an evolution beyond this understanding. And that I call the third level of understanding God. And this is where God appears as the world. He didn't become the world. He appears as the world. And it's not a he, it's an it, but he seems to be the easiest way to say it often. Please forgive me. So God appears as the world. God is the substrate of all form. That means God is underneath everything. And yet God transcends all form. So God is not affected by any form that appears in it. And no particular form belongs to God. God is all there is. And all forms are within God. Understanding God at this level, the world makes a lot more sense. Because the difficulties and the atrocities of this world are happening upon the playing field that is created here in the manifestational reality by Maya. But it is not touching God. It is not touching consciousness. It is not touching who we truly are. There's a quote from the Course in Miracles that refers to two levels of understanding God that I thought was worth looking at. I'll read it to you. The God of the crucifixion demands that he crucify, and his worshippers obey. In his name they crucify themselves, believing the power of the Son of God is born out of sacrifice and pain. The God of the resurrection demands nothing, for he does not will to take away. He does not require obedience, for obedience implies submission. He would only have you learn your own will and follow it, not in the spirit of sacrifice and submission, but in the gladness of freedom. That's from A Course in Miracles. And so God, as we can grow to understand and know and to claim as our own identity, is one of freedom, of love, of complete forgiveness and understanding. So as I understand it, I, this body, this being, am within this third level of understanding God. And this third level of God, the substrate of all form, everything, everywhere, is who I am. So I am unaffected by anything that happens to this body, in this body. And from this awareness, we are free of all occurrences, all negativity, which could be classified as illusion, ignorance, or not self. So, in truth, our true self is outside of karma, outside of the manifest world. Swami Dayananda said, guilt and hurt are incidental properties. They are not intrinsic to who we are. And, you know, this scenario makes a lot of sense, as we have a very orderly world here, where karmic laws are in action and everything is lawful. There's no policeman God with a whistle and a bully stick that is keeping control of things individually. It is a compassionate, it is a non-dual world. And it's directing us to realize who we truly are, not who we appear to be. Here's a quote from A Course in Miracles. I am your resurrection and your life. You live in me because you live in God. And everyone lives in you as you live in everyone. And it's really forcing us to claim that identity as consciousness, as one, as source, as God. And if you imagine yourself to be at this level of consciousness, understanding, and identity, this quote makes entire sense. It's a little confusing if you take it from the point of view of the body. So in summary of the field, it creates an influence at a distance. The information field exists everywhere. It's interconnected, inter-influencing, intercommunicating. And we as individual beings have our own information field, and we are embedded in the information field. We are non-separate from it. So we are within God, Source, and the One. And we went through the 3 levels of understanding God. The beginner God, the second level God, and God as consciousness and self behind it all. So that's the information and the 3 levels of God. Next up are the laws of engagement, or the laws of the universe. And I hope you'll stick around to watch those.